All right, everyone. The nation of Russia has decided to send some troops to Venezuela, probably to prevent, the U.S. from invading or whatever. And I'm thinking to myself, they have every right to do so. It's funny, like Trump has come out and said, well, we'll use every measures on the table to get the Russians out of Venezuela. They're military allies. They can put troops in Venezuela if they want. It's not exactly the Cuban Missile Crisis. We're talking a few, a regiment of Russians with some tanks and mortars and shit. Not exactly a threat to our allies in the region. What are they going to do? Attack suicidally? No, they're there to prevent any foreign interference in Venezuela. But here's the thing. While they certainly have the right to do this, and while U.S. condemnation means absolutely dick in a nation like Venezuela, it's not going to help the Maduro regime. The Maduro regime has already fundamentally crumbled anyway. It's already basically over. That's just the way that it is. Socialism kills everything that it touches, number one, so it was inevitable. Number two, the economy there has flatlined. Debt alone will continue creating massive problems for decades to come. Do you honestly think that Maduro's particular style of socialism will survive? I don't think that it will. And remember, Guaido he's not a Western ally. He's not a U.S. pawn like a CIA conspiracy like some idiots say. They're like, well, socialism is actually good. Guaido is a U.S. pawn. Dude, Guaido is a socialist. He's just a socialist that doesn't want to nationalize everything and kill as many people. He's still going to be, it's almost not a form of reform if Maduro gets ousted and replaced with him anyway. It's not exactly going to change the situation. Look, the debt's still there. The hyperinflation's still there. The chronic shortages are still there. Literally the only positive thing that can happen is that he denationalizes some of these key industries, reduces the socialistic burden, and invites foreign individuals in to try to bail them out. In order to do that, though, you're going to have to take a lot of the means of production and transfer it to foreign ownership, which would piss off the domestic population. They've been primed to believe that that's a form of imperialism, even if it's the only way, literally, to solve your economic problems. And even then, let's say that happens. Let's say Guaido. Okay, let's look at the hypothetical. Guaido comes in. Maduro gets pigeonholed. He gets fucking thrown in the ocean or something. He drowns. Guaido comes in. He's the Führer of Venezuela now. He says, okay, foreign groups can come in. We're going to give them factory ownership, stuff like that, land to develop and things in return for basically bailing out the debt, and we're going to restructure the economy. Imagine that he manages to do that and things don't flatline further. Like, people don't revolt because, he took their microwaves away, their microwave subsidies. Let's say that things remain at a relative calm. Does this mean that Venezuela magically becomes wealthy and healthy and wise and suddenly skyrockets back to being the almost first world power that it had been before the oil crisis? No, because the oil crisis is still there. You need decades and decades to diversify the economy further. A significant proportion of their productivity, insofar as exports go, is driven by oil. The problem is that they borrowed money against oil that hadn't been extracted yet years and years beforehand. And so they were already heavily in debt on oil sales that dried up because oil prices collapsed. And Trump is, by the way, fucking around with OPEC on a regular basis now, trying to keep the price at the pump lower, trying to keep the oil prices as low as he can for a reason. Part of it's related to Venezuela. Yes, it would be excellent for the American hemisphere and for U.S. interests if Venezuela falls out of the hands of someone who's really just butchering his own people and biding time at the moment. Maduro's not accomplishing anything. He probably, like weeks ago, he's like, well, we're going to make big changes to Venezuela. We're going to do X, Y. No, you're not. You're not going to make any changes at all. Because people are still going to be starving, so therefore they're still going to be protesting and looting. You're still going to be shooting at them. Socialism will still be there poisoning Venezuela. Oil prices will still be low. Your debt will still be rising. Hyperinflation will still be hyperinflating. And you'll still have kicked foreigners out of the ownership of most of your means of production, which prevents anyone from wanting to invest in your country. That's Maduro's fault. And it's Chavez's fault, but before Maduro even comes in, back when Chavez was alive, for structuring the economy in a highly centralized manner that begs the question, how exactly are you ever going to diversify it into a modern economy? Hell, Russia has enough problems doing that. Russia's spent years now trying to diversify and get away from just raw, natural gas and coal and oil output was, a lot of their economy, and mining. A lot of raw resources, steel and so forth. I believe salt as well. I think Romania has the world's largest salt mine, if I remember correctly, which is slightly odd. But no, Russia's got its own problems, and their economy is technically semi-diversified, and they're a major military power. So it doesn't matter if they put troops in Venezuela to try to maintain the status quo. I don't see that it can possibly do so. I think what's more likely to happen is that Maduro gets ousted anyway. The Russians end up having to leave. And or, here's the other possibility. They offer Guaido certain terms. And they say, okay, well, fuck Maduro. He's, it's been an embarrassment on the world stage. We're going to kick him out ourselves. Maybe the Russians are there to oversee the removal of Maduro. Has anyone considered the possibility that the Russians realize the gig is up in Venezuela and they simply want the next slightly less strong-arm kind of dictator to still be kind of a Russian ally instead of sucking the U.S.'s teats? That's a possibility, too, that a lot of people aren't talking about. That's about all. Peace out.